Don't make these mistakes and fall into the smart home company traps. I have the information you need to protect yourself from their lies. Stay tuned so we can go over all the details. The first lie they're telling you is that you're buying hardware. In reality, you're not buying the hardware at all. You're buying software, or in some situations, you're buying the hardware that's dependent on software that may require a subscription model in the future, or it might be a situation where the company goes out of business. For example, Brilliant, they stopped selling their products, and who knows what the future of that company is like. And those are really expensive products that are potentially not going to be functional moving forward. Some companies have done the right thing and provided support or moved integration locally when they were going out of business, but you really can't depend on a company to do that. And even if the company is trying to do the right thing, do you really want to be in a subscription model? So they have you under their total control of what they want to do with that software. So any of the cloud integrations are particularly troublesome, that they could change how they're billing, start billing if they weren't billing. Somebody might change an API. I know this happened with Samsung refrigerators, having Google integration with the calendars. There's an API change and it took months to fix that. There's an example of Life 360 and SmartThings in the past where there was an integration that was working and then some things got changed and then it was not supported again. Same with Home Assistant, Life 360 was working with them and then it didn't because there were some changes and that's been off and on. So lots of complexities in the cloud and not something you want to rely on. Another great example is IFT. If this, then that, and how everything's changed with that service over the years and they've moved over to the subscription service. It's really a much different environment than it was previously where you could have some of your own custom integrations and connections between software companies that didn't maybe natively support each other, but they could be supported through IFT. With these lies, you have the possibility that the company just changes their mind also. So Yeelight and TP-Link, Casa, they've really, changed some of their procedures and they ended some of the local support there. Google and Nest is another great example that works with Nest. There's been issues and removal there. So lots of good examples where you're relying on the company to do the right thing and that's not really what you're looking for. How you address these concerns are to move as much as possible to local integrations. So I'm a big fan at this point of Home Assistant and historically of SmartThings, and they were moving more and more local, but Home Assistant's just certainly another level of local integration. And having that local integration, it prevents you from having to worry about what's going with the cloud and how's that particular provider going to support this moving forward. Are they going to require a subscription or some other buy-in or change their terms? And what does that look like? So having all that local integration is key, and you can do that through Zigbee, Z-Wave, HomeKit integration, or any other of the local integrations that exist. But doing that really protects you from these type of changes the companies may make. Some of the reasons I moved away from SmartThings were some of the company decisions that Samsung had made there. So they deprecated an old hub, which sometimes you expect, but if you would have more local integration, you should be able to support that perpetually, particularly if the hub's just working. Why do they need to deprecate things? Just let it be, as is. Maybe it doesn't get new functionality, that type of thing, but there's no reason that your stuff should get cut off because the company just decides they don't want to support that one any longer. Another thing SmartThings did was they discontinued some of the attributes that users really liked, such as web core. So they had that great functionality and users spent tons of time setting everything up there and ensuring it was working and had all their automations working, and then they discontinued support for that. Another issue is companies selling your data. For example, Life 360, it became apparent that they were selling users precise location data. So that's really a concern, when you want some, certain things private, like your location and those types of things. So the fact that they're out there selling that, definitely a turnoff, definitely a concern. So anytime you can stop that, Make sure that's what you're doing. We've utilized Home Assistant now for our location, information, because that is something that has to be cloud-based unless you're only looking for leave and return home. But what we're looking for is, arrival at other places like workplaces, school, those types of things. Another concern is companies losing your data or having major vulnerabilities. So this became apparent with Wise when they had an issue where I believe some of the users were seeing other users' cameras and such. So that's a huge concern. I know Anchor and Eufy, had that issue. There were issues with Belkin, with Wemo, and definitely with Amazon and Ring. They have had issues in the past as well. So lots of big companies and big names out there that are in the smart home industry that have had different issues with vulnerabilities or security, breaches in the past. So definitely another issue with having all your data out there. The last issue I wanted to mention was the promotions and advertisements. That's one of the reasons why the Amazon Assistant, hasn't become the major, the primary assistant within our house, and we stick with the Google Home. Because the Amazon Assistant, when I ask it to do something, turn the lights on or off, afterwards it won't just say okay or done. It'll say okay, and you could do this thing or you could do that thing, or what about this other thing? And I'm like, no, I don't want any of that. I want you to do what I ask you, and that's it. I don't want anything extra. Another example of this was when we had MyQ and utilized that for our garage doors as the primary resource. They were always trying to get you to work with another partner rather than allowing you to utilize their API and build it within your ecosystem. You'd have to work with a partner, and their partners weren't even good. The setups weren't good. It wasn't really what we were looking for, and it didn't really integrate back into our home, our smart home in that manner. So it just didn't make any sense for us. So now that you know the lies that smart home companies have been telling you and the various pitfalls associated with those smart home companies, what are you going to do about it? Well, the biggest thing is to keep everything as local as possible. So again, I alluded to this earlier, but we use Home Assistant. So looking for those Z-Wave, Zigbee, and Matter, the HomeKit integrations, all those things that are local, that's really what you're looking for. And then there's some things, obviously, that there's not a real local integration for, so you may have to use some cloud services. So be cognizant of that, be aware of that, and make sure that you're mindful of what you're doing, who you're working with, what happens if that company goes out of business? What's the worst case scenario? So be working that through in your head as you're purchasing or working with that smart home product. What if that stops functioning totally? And what are your backup plans? And that's another thing that I really think is important, is that redundancy. So if you have something that should be automated, do you have a switch that you can manually do it? That's one reason that we haven't gone with smart bulbs in our house. We went with smart light switches, because the worst situation is that we continue to do it the way we used to do it, manually, and push the button on the wall. If you have smart bulbs and you don't have another backup, what's going to happen when they don't work? Another item to consider, though, as I had mentioned, there's security vulnerabilities or selling of your information. So how do you protect against that? Well, you think about what information they're collecting, what level of detail is it, and what would happen if somebody else had that. So your location certainly is a big issue, and that's why Life 360 was so concerning. Having all that information out there regarding where everybody physically is definitely a security risk there. Some of the other information, maybe it's not that important. I know a lot of my information is out there already, so it's maybe not as big of a deal to me. I hope I gave you enough information now that you're at least aware of the pitfalls and the lies that smart home companies are telling you. Make sure you like and subscribe as we continue to produce additional content, and you won't want to miss it.